And welcome to episode 9 of our Climate Reality. It is a pleasure to be back with you this Wednesday evening. Information to share with you. We have two very special guests with us, Dr. Angus Friday and Dr. Claire Morale. And of course, before we get into our discussion this evening, you will get to hear a little bit more about them. So do stay with us. And of course, we welcome our listeners on K105 FM and also our viewers on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Every year, according to the United Nations, the ocean economy has an estimated turnover of between US $3 and $6 trillion. This includes employment, ecosystem services provided by the ocean, and cultural services. It is also estimated that fisheries and aquaculture contribute US $100 billion per year and about 260 million jobs to the global economy. The oceans and seas are a key source of food, energy, and minerals, and are being used more and more for multiple sectoral activities. The maritime transport also plays a big role in the globalized market in the form of container ships, tankers, and ports for the vessels. Furthermore, coastal tourism is the largest business within ocean-related activities in terms of employment. According to Wu Hongbo, Secretary General of the Ocean Conference and Under Secretary General of UN DESA, the world's ocean, interconnected, is undeniably essential for sustainable development and humankind. It provides services that are vital for our health, well-being, and survival on planet Earth. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize. Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We going green to be healthy. Going green for security. Going green for prosperity. Going green with Solar Vision. We going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Montrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan. But residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
It's the 4th edition of Hubbard's Live Free for 1 year promotion. Cuatro Punto Cero. It's unbelievably amazing. You can win free fuel, free drinks, cash prizes, free property and vehicular insurance, free cable, TV and internet, free electricity, free coke, free water, free cooking gas, free paint supplies, free passes to Sunshine Promotion events for 2023, free groceries, all for 1 whole year. And every winner receives a lunch package. Be sure to fill out the entry forms and enter it into the marked entry boxes at all Hubbard's departments and at participating outlets. Promotion runs from April 1st to September 30th, 2023. Draws will be held every 2 weeks. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our climate reality, and for those of you just joining us, we welcome you. We're very happy to have you with us this evening. This evening, we look at climate change and the blue economy, and I'm sure many of us, we've heard that phrase before, the blue economy, and tonight we are going to share with you information about the blue economy, what is meant by the blue economy, the components of that, for example, fisheries, tourism, ecosystem preservation, and of course we're going to talk a little bit about how climate change can impact our oceans. So at this time we're going to welcome our guest, and we are going to start with Dr. Claire Morale. Dr. Morale, it's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and of course we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. So I'm Claire Morrell, and I'm a professor at St George's University. I teach in the undergraduate component of the university in the Department of Biology, Ecology and Conservation, and I'm a marine scientist. So I'm involved in quite a lot of initiatives in Grenada. I work with ocean spirits, as well as with a few other initiatives as well. So thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about these things, in the course of our discussion. Dr. Angus Friday, no stranger to GBN, of course. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on this program, and just to say, I highly commend the people who organize this, because I think it's so important to get these messages out regarding climate and oceans. So my name is Dr. Angus Friday. I'm the Blue Economy Director at the Waite Institute. We work with countries around the world to help them with conservation of the ocean and sustainable fisheries, but we also help them with the blue economy. So that's about sustainable development of the coastal and ocean area in terms of livelihoods, exports, and so on. We have active programs all around the world, in the Caribbean, in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, and in the Indian Ocean.
Thank you, Dr. Friday. And I'm going to stay with you. I'm not going to give you a chance to breathe. Let's start by talking about the blue economy, because I want us to put that into context so that our listeners and viewers can understand what we're talking about. The blue economy, what is it?
Well, the first thing to understand about the blue economy is that it is fundamentally about sustainability. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the ocean economy, but it's a sustainable approach to the ocean economy. It's about biodiversity, it's about livelihoods and jobs, and also about economic and financial sustainability. We're talking about coasts and oceans, and it's important to think about, what our oceans mean for us. We live on a planet, we call it Earth, but in fact, 71% of the planet is covered by oceans, mm-hmm. and some 94% of the biosphere, so that's all the living matter, is in fact residing in the oceans. 50% of the oxygen we breathe, so 1 in every 2 breaths we take, actually comes from the ocean. So oceans are absolutely important to us. There's an entire economy around it. And harnessing that economy, harnessing those activities in a sustainable manner is what we mean by the blue economy.
Thank you very much. And let's bring it home. How is that blue economy important to Grenada?
Well, I think in many respects. I mean, let's start with Grenada's economy. We think of ourselves as a spice island, but in fact, when you look at spices, that takes up about 17% of our exports. Whereas fish, a fast-growing sector, is about 10% of our exports. Cocoa at about 7.5%. But overall, those exports of products, we're looking at about $30 million a year. Tourism, which totally relies on our coasts and oceans, that's about 121 million. So the ocean economy is vital to Grenada. We're surrounded by the oceans. If Grenada is 346 square kilometers, the ocean space that we control, that's under Grenada's sovereign power, is actually 26,000 square kilometers. So you can basically fit 75 Grenadas within our ocean space. And as you said earlier, ocean economy is growing rapidly. It's in the trillions, and there are a whole range of opportunities there for Grenadians in a whole range of different sectors.
I just want you to go into a little more detail. You mentioned various sectors. Just give us a few examples as to how some of the other sectors can actually benefit from this.
Sure. Well, let's think about fisheries. In a lot of island communities, fisheries is an important sector. It employs many people. And it allows for, at a very small scale, for, someone to, if you own a boat, you can go out, catch fish, have a business based on that, bring the fish home, sell it. That's quite important. And we see the fisheries sector growing now. Fishing boats are getting bigger and bigger. People are going much further afield. So that's one area. But interestingly enough, aquaculture globally is becoming even more important than capture fisheries. So about 50% of the fish we eat today actually comes from aquaculture, so farmed fish, as opposed to wild fish capture. That's an important opportunity, either in terms of, aquaculture onshore, aquaculture offshore, and these are growing areas and set to expand further. Tourism, we mentioned already. Many people are already involved in tourism sector. Energy coming from renewable energy from the sea, be it wave energy, tidal energy, wind energy coming from the sea, geothermal energy from the sea, a whole range of sources now, increasingly renewable sources are coming from the sea, and people are looking at that. But we need to think beyond some of these sectors. Education is also quite important. Educational, marine education is becoming increasingly important. Finance, blue finance is increasingly an important area. Information technology related to the ocean is also increasingly important. So we can think of some of the traditional blue economy sectors, but it's also moving fast in areas of information technology, finance as a service, education, and so forth.
Thank you. Dr. Morale, anything you would like to add in here? I'm sure you would like to add a few bits around what Dr. Friday just spoke of.
So certainly, and I think, sorry that I'm a teacher, and definitions are important to me, but I think Dr. Friday was emphasizing that sustainability really is at the heart of the blue economy. So I think unpicking actually what sustainability means, so everyone's on the same page, I think it's important. So the definition that I use is really meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I think that's something that when we're talking about the oceans, when we're talking about sustainability in general, we really need to be thinking about future generations. What we do here today on the planet is going to impact the opportunities for future generations. So I think that's worth defining right up front.
Right. Anything else, Dr. Friday, before we move on?
Well, look, I think, we spoke about education sector, so I'd like to tease that out a little bit as one of the core areas. We often don't think of education as an export, but in fact, Grenada trains 1 in every 100 doctors practicing in the United States. So Grenada is an important hub, an important source for medical education. So there are lots of different directions, and this is around SGU now. So a lot of different directions in which we could take that. So we have medical education. We could think about medical tourism that's tied to the coastal area, and we need to think about marine education as well. And there are a few key areas that I'd like to highlight in that area. First of all, we have the Grenadines, the world-renowned sailing destination. And we see Grenada is a major hub for yachts and the maritime services coming to Grenada. During the hurricane season, we've got, off Belmont, the southern bays get filled up with yachts because people are actually coming here to escape the hurricane season. But while they're here, they need lots of different services. And this is an area that I think we need to get a lot more people trained in. Marine services, marine engineering, and so on, so that they can service boats from an engineering perspective and with a whole range of other services. I think one of the other areas that we should think about is Reindeer Shoals, and I just want to mention this. Reindeer Shoals is an underwater seamound, you can call it. It's an area about half the size of Grenada, and that's to the south of Grenada if you go off Point Celine. So you can go about 12 miles out to the point where you can actually no longer see Grenada very well. And you look down in the ocean and you can actually see the sand, because in the shallowest point it's about 35 feet. Okay. I've had the pleasure of actually being diving there. With Eco Dive, we saw one of the largest tiger sharks we ever saw. And diving with sharks is actually a hugely important area of the economy. In the Bahamas, in Palau, some work was done by the Australian Institute of Marine Science. And they worked out that for a particular reef with about 100 sharks, if you were to slaughter all of the sharks, you probably make about $10,000. But in fact, the shark diving tourism you have around that generates about $179,000 per shark per year. And over the lifetime of that shark, it's about 1.9 million. So 100 sharks, 1.9 million, over their lifetime, that's $190 million by leaving them in the sea, as opposed to catching them and taking them out. And so I think these are some of the important areas we need to think about. And one other area, we have the largest submarine volcano in the Western Hemisphere. That's Kikamjeni. And many people may not know this, but the undersea vents is where you have all sorts of interesting biodiversity, genetics, and so on. And enzymes from the undersea vents were actually used to decode the human genome. AZT, the first successful treatment for HIV/AIDS, comes from Caribbean sea sponge. So I say all of this to say that there is a wealth of genetic biodiversity that we would have around in Grenadian waters and around Kikamjeni in particular. And we need to be looking at this from the point of view of research and development and what this could actually mean for biotechnology, for the creation of new drugs, and so forth.
Well, you sort of preempted me, because I was going to ask you about health and the blue economy, and you just mentioned about the HIV and opportunities to do new medicine. Very, very interesting indeed. What about agriculture? Any connection there?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we often think of agriculture as being completely divorced from what happens in the sea, but in fact they're very connected. If you're doing agriculture in Birch Grove, for example, and you were to put a lot of fertilizer into the land, you have a big downwash. Let's say you get heavy rainfall. Within 15 minutes, that fertilizer and whatever else you put in, the insecticides, pesticides, and so forth, that's down at, that's going to be in the ocean affecting the coral reefs. So we see that as a result of agriculture taking place, and we call this whole process ridge to reef. So what happens in the uplands affects what happens in the sea. So it's very important that we think about, the importance of organic agriculture and the positive benefits that also has for the oceans. If we keep putting poisons, things to help agriculture, it could have a detrimental impact. Now, we understand the importance of agriculture, but I think the key thing is that there are substitutes we can be using, organic substitutes, which would have less of a detrimental impact on the ocean.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll invite Dr. Morale to speak a little bit about the impact of climate change on our oceans. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
You're watching Our Climate Reality on GBN Television, brought to you in part by Republic Bank Limited, Hubbards, and Classic Lighting.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize. Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank. We're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan. But residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
It's the 4th edition of Hubbard's Live Free for 1 year promotion. Cuatro Punto Cero. It's unbelievably amazing. You can win free fuel, free drinks, cash prizes, free property and vehicular insurance, free cable, TV and internet, free electricity, free coke, free water, free cooking gas, free paint supplies, free passes to Sunshine Promotion events for 2023, free groceries, all for 1 whole year. And every winner receives a lunch package. Be sure to fill out the entry forms and enter it into the marked entry boxes at all Hubbard's departments and at participating outlets. Promotion runs from April 1st to September 30th, 2023. Draws will be held every 2 weeks. Terms and conditions apply.
Solar Vision is the champion. We're lighting up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighting the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We're going green to be healthy. We're going green for security. We're going green for prosperity. Going green with Solar Vision. We're going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Monrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Welcome back, everyone. Our Climate Reality, that's the program that you are viewing, and if you're listening on radio, of course. Dr. Morale, Dr. Friday has, to some extent explained to us the importance of the ocean as it relates to the blue economy. Is there anything else, any more details you would like to go into as it relates to the importance of the ocean and also the impacts that climate change has on our ocean?
I think in terms of the importance, the only other thing I would say is that I very much consider that the planet that we live on, that includes the ocean and the land, is really our life support system. And I think that's underscored by many things that have been said by yourself in your introduction and Dr. Friday as well. So I think when we're thinking about the importance, it's important to every single person on the planet and every living organism on the planet as well. But sort of moving from there to talk about some of the threats, some of the impacts of climate change on the ocean. We could have a discussion that lasted many weeks, but I think in the interest of the program this evening, I think some of the most profound effects that climate change is having on the ocean probably hinge around three. One is the temperature increase in the ocean, the second one being sea level rise, and the third being ocean acidification. And those are three very important impacts with some terrible consequences. They're not necessarily independent of one another. There's interconnectivity between those, but each of those three is of great importance. And I think it's also worth mentioning at this point that climate change is obviously a huge negative impact, but the effects that climate change will have on the oceans are set against a backdrop of a huge array of local and international threats already. So the oceans have suffered from many years of pollution, and over-exploitation of resources, removal of habitats. And so really what we're seeing with climate change is that just is on top of what we already know to be true. And I think the other thing perhaps just to mention just in my intro there is that the oceans, just the same as land, they're really, really complex. And much as there's fantastic science, there's been a huge amount of research looking at the oceans, looking at land, sometimes those connections between what's going on in the environment and what's going on with organisms is not necessarily plain to see until something happens to the system, like a species becomes extinct, for example. Mm-hmm. So we live on a beautiful but very, very complicated planet, and one that we need to do everything we can to protect.
Yes, indeed. So the blue economy, as you know, on a whole, in a holistic way, how does climate change actually affects that? And maybe you can talk about what aspects of the blue economy are most affected by climate change.
Okay, so I think anything that's going to negatively impact the ocean is going to have an impact on the blue economy, on what we can earn through our use of the ocean. And I don't like to say use of the ocean because it's got so much inherent value in it, even without being exploited. But Dr. Friday was talking about the importance of tourism, and islands like Grenada, we rely very heavily on attracting people because of our beautiful coastlines, our beaches. But for example, sea level rise really threatens our very beaches. Every little increase in sea level rise will start to erode coastlines, and anyone who's lived in Grenada for probably not even much more than a decade, you would have seen the impact of erosion on our coastlines, and that's something that's happening. And certainly not just in Grenada, but that will very much affect what's going on and what we can earn from the blue economy. I think with temperatures at the moment, the temperature of the ocean over the decade between 2011 and 2020, the ocean temperature increased by just less than 1 degree centigrade. And that doesn't seem like an awful lot. But coral reefs are an incredibly important component of tropical marine systems. And what we do know about corals is that they live very close to their upper thermal limit. So even half a degree temperature rise on average can be enough to cause corals to be very unhealthy, and you may have heard the term coral bleaching. Mm-hmm. So corals are very complex animals. They have, without getting too sciencey, they have a very close relationship with another organism that lives with them. And it's a very close partnership. But when the temperatures rise, that partnership begins to break down. And over time, if those temperatures stay even as high, just as 0.5 degrees above their normal levels, that relationship can break down to the extent that the corals become very vulnerable and they can actually die. So already we've seen, just in the last 10 years, we've seen almost 1 degree, and the forecasts for climate change are for that temperature to carry on rising. And maybe I should just sort of hinging on coral reefs. Coral reefs are important because we attract people to come to Grenada to look at them. But more so than that, the coral reefs are what creates the beaches that we enjoy. So if the corals are not doing so well, they're not growing so well, they're not producing skeletons as they normally would, and our beaches the erosion will be exacerbated as well, because that material, that sand, won't be being deposited there anymore as well. That's a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, but I think it's really right at the core of our coastlines, and I think that's what we see. The open ocean far away from land is incredibly important, supporting life on the planet as well, but somehow it's a little bit more remote, a little bit less tangible for us to see, but we can see lots of effects right at our coastline. Maybe I could just go on as well in terms of ocean acidification. So the huge amounts of carbon dioxide have been released into the atmosphere, and that's really why the atmosphere is warming and the planet is warming and the oceans are warming as a result. But when there's increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, that actually dissolves into the ocean. And I think about 30% of all of the carbon dioxide that's ever been released into the atmosphere has dissolved into the ocean with time. So it's like that carbon dioxide gets taken up into the ocean. So that's great for us, and that helps to moderate climate change, but it's not such good news for the ocean, because it has adjusted the chemistry of the ocean. And all of the organisms that live in the ocean have evolved to a particular biochemical makeup, a particular set of chemicals. And we've altered that. Through altering the atmosphere, the ocean chemistry has adjusted as well. The term ocean acidification, a little bit misleading, but basically the simplest explanation is that the pH of the ocean, people may know that pure water is a pH of 7, that's a neutral pH. Under normal circumstances, the pH of the ocean is slightly on the alkaline scale at about 8.1. But we're reducing that pH by increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean. And that's really terrible news for everything on the planet, particularly seen in organisms that lay down shells. If you think of mussels and clams, also corals lay down a skeleton. That's a biological process. So if you adjust the chemistry of the ocean, the organisms that live in the ocean, their biochemistry is adjusted as well. And it makes it more difficult for those shells to be laid down, that skeleton to be laid down. So it's kind of, in some ways, if you think about corals and sea level rise, if sea level rise was gradual, corals would just be able to grow and just gradually adjust over time with sea level rise, potentially. But if they're trying to cope with sea level rise at the same time that their growth is being slowed by ocean acidification, we really do have probably quite a big problem. Mm-hmm. And maybe just to go back to one of the facts, I think Dr. Friday shared it, that about 50% of the oxygen in every single breath that any one of us has ever taken, is taking right now, and will take for the rest of our lives. 50% of the oxygen has come from organisms that live in the ocean. And many of those same organisms are microscopic organisms that have a shell. And the functioning of those organisms relies on them being intact, including having a shell. So if we're compromising, if we're interfering with their ability to lay down those shells, potentially we're going to interrupt their production of oxygen, which is then going to have an effect on the atmosphere and, of course, have an effect on us as well. So that's really just to get you started, I think. And I'm sorry, I feel a little bit like, Dr. Friday painted such a great picture of all of the benefits to be reaped, and here I'm telling you about all the bad news, really. But and I think there are a lot of things to be deeply concerned about with regard to climate change. I mean, certainly with the ocean, but the entire planet is certainly threatened by a number of aspects of climate change.
Yeah. Before I go to Dr. Friday, I must ask, we mentioned sea level rise, the increase in ocean temperatures, and of course ocean acidification. We have been seeing, some things happening on our beaches, a couple of years back. The sargassum seaweed. Right. Is there any connection there?
Almost certainly there's a connection. So sargassum seaweed, the type that we have been getting, the first influx into Grenada or into the Caribbean region was in 2011, and there's been a huge amount of research done on sargassum seaweed since that time. And the pointers are to a number of things. Certainly the increased temperature of the oceans, as most people who have gardens know, when the temperature increases, generally things grow faster. And the sargassum that we've been getting, the type is a floating sargassum. It floats at the surface, and if the temperature rises, it grows quicker, which it certainly has been doing. And the other thing is that, and I think it was mentioned already, in terms of pollution, we've increased the amounts of nutrients in the ocean through agricultural fertilizer, through sewage pollution, through runoff, through habitat destruction. You get increased erosion from the land into the ocean. And all of those things are true, but the connection to climate change is extreme weather events. So when you have extreme weather events, as we've seen in Grenada, like flooding and then drought and then maybe some more flooding, that increases the amount of runoff into the environment. So certainly the sargassum influx, the blame has been certainly put onto climate change effects, and it is highly likely that what we've seen over recent years in terms of sargassum is something that we're going to have to get used to, because unfortunately climate change isn't going anywhere for some time. So with that link, and I know that sargassum's been coming in the last, in recent weeks as well, certainly into the East Coast, and the forecasts are for there to be, I think at this time, the satellite imagery, the mats of sargassum are such that you can actually see them from satellite. They are gigantic, and there's almost twice as much sargassum visible at this time of year compared to the same time last year, and that's of great concern. Particularly of great concern, actually, according to the forecast for the northern Caribbean and the middle sections of the Caribbean. We may escape for another few months without huge amounts, but Barbados and islands further north are already feeling very, very severe effects of influxes of sargassum.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Friday, anything you'd like to add? Yeah.
Well, I think Dr. Morale pretty much covered everything. I mean, I think just one of the points to make on acidity, just so people understand ocean acidity, is that, these people may say, well, these small, tiny creatures, I mean, if they die off, so what? The point is that they're actually at the bottom of an entire food chain, which, goes all the way up to the fish that we eat. So if you take that out, you get potentially an entire collapse of that ecosystem. So it's really important that we get it right in terms of what happens in the atmosphere. I think the other thing to say about sea level rise and storm surges, we did some work on this, looking particularly at St. George's. We worked with New York University together with NASA. We actually went into the Carenage and put tide gauges to look at how the tide changes over time. We got all of that data over to NASA, and then they did some projections looking forward, and saying that parts of the Carenage, for example, could be underwater for part of the year, by 2030, and by 2050, certainly, the carnage is pretty much gone. You take that over to Grand Anse. Well, we don't know what will happen with sea level rise, how the sand will change, but the worst case scenario would be a situation in which we have to do a huge amount of engineering, just to save a Grand Anse beach. So, this is not something that's far in the future. These are things that are actually happening now, and we, as Dr. Morale mentioned, we also see with extreme weather events, with climate change, the detrimental impact that has on the coast, just from the storm surge alone, but because of runoff and so on, that was already mentioned. But I want to say something about the opportunity, because what climate change has done is really to shine a spotlight on the unsustainable practices we have as a global economy, and the impact of that on biodiversity, in general. So for the first time, we have a global community where the environment has actually become one of the most important factors in international, discussions. You look at the World Bank at the moment. The World Bank, they're starting to look for a new head of the World Bank. They're looking for someone who's going to be sensitive to climate change and all of these environmental impacts that we're seeing. So there's a shift happening. There's an important shift happening because of climate change. It's drawing more attention. It means that more resources are becoming available. Just to give you a very quick sense, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, a large consulting firm, they did some work saying that by 2026, assets under management relating to ESG, that's environment, social, and governance attributes, is going to reach about 33 trillion. So the pension funds, which are the top of the financial food chain, if we could say that, they are now starting to think, they're thinking long term. They want to ensure that the things that, if they're going to give money to banks, to venture capital, to hedge funds, they need to ensure that those people are actually investing in sustainability around climate, sustainability around oceans, biodiversity, etc. So there is a little bit of a silver lining here in that more resources actually going into these areas. We're going to be seeing a lot of innovation coming up, I think, in the years ahead, in climate, in oceans, etc. And that's an opportunity.
Thank you, Doc. We take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're watching Our Climate Reality on GBN Television, brought to you in part by Republic Bank Limited, Hubbards, and Classic Lighting.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize. Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
It's the 4th edition of Hubbard's Live Free for 1 year promotion. Cuatro Punto Cero. It's unbelievably amazing. You can win free fuel, free drinks, cash prizes, free property and vehicular insurance, free cable, TV and internet, free electricity, free coke, free water, free cooking gas, free paint supplies, free passes to Sunshine Promotion events for 2023, free groceries, all for 1 whole year. And every winner receives a lunch package. Be sure to fill out the entry forms and enter it into the marked entry boxes at all Hubbard's departments and at participating outlets. Promotion runs from April 1st to September 30th, 2023. Draws will be held every 2 weeks. Terms and conditions apply.
Our environment is our responsibility. Budget Marine contributes by selling environmentally friendly products. For example, we sell lightweight open boats that require a relatively small engine. Best to combine with our Tohatsu 4-stroke engines. They use use little fuel and have a low emission. Carib Marine solar panels are specially made to withstand the Caribbean climate. The panels are suitable for use at home and on the boat. The required chargers and converters are also available from Budget Marine. Keeping your car and boat clean extends the lifespan, but residues of the cleaning products disappear in nature. We at Budget Marine sell eco-friendly cleaning products from EcoWorks, not harmful to nature and also clean very well. Plastic junk in our oceans is a major problem. Fortunately, there are companies that clean up and reuse the plastic into usable products. Marlowe, manufacturer of lines and ropes, produces docking lines made out of plastic waste. Another company is Sperry Shoes. Sperry has a collection made from used fabrics and plastic waste. Just a few examples of how we at Budget Marine contribute to help protecting our environment. We care.
Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten up the whole Caribbean. Solar Vision is the champion. We lighten the whole Caribbean. The ultimate solution to get rid of pollution. We going green to be healthy. Going green for security. Going green for prosperity. Going green with Solar Vision. We going green.
Available at Grenada Trade Center, Monrouge, St. George. For more information, call 444-5291 or 404-9012.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our climate reality, and we're discussing climate change and the blue economy. Of course, a lot of focus on our oceans and the impact climate change is having there. Dr. Friday, I want to come back to you. You're involved in some levels of programming aimed to furthering the development of the blue economy. Can you share with us some aspects of that work, where you are and what's happening?
Sure. Well, I think, as early as 2014, Grenada started doing quite a lot of work in the blue economy space. In fact, in 2016, Grenada actually held and hosted one of the first blue economy investment conferences, right here in Grenada. And one of the things that we also did was to establish something called the Blue Innovation Institute. And I wanted to say why this is important. When you think about the creation of industry, let's take Silicon Valley, for example. Silicon Valley in California, multi-trillion-dollar industry around information technology. But that was able to get going because of a lot of the institutional knowledge you had, for example, in Stanford University, plus together with government investment and so on. But from these small beginnings, and you get the development of clusters. So Silicon Valley is one example. We see the same thing around Cambridge and Oxford in the United Kingdom. In India, the Indian Institute of Technology, India is now a powerhouse in terms of information technology. So the role of institutions is absolutely key. And so it's great that we have St. George's University here. That's a huge opportunity that we need to be thinking about. So the Blue Innovation Institute, I think, can play also an important role in terms of getting more students to Grenada. We see how important that is to the Grenadian economy. Let me just give you a very quick example of that. A company that I'm involved with called Atlantean. We are working with the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. And since last year, we started actually bringing students here looking at sargassum to turn that into fertilizer and biogas. This year, we have another cohort of students coming looking at sargassum as fertilizer. How do you get some of the heavy metals out? We're looking at biogas and the potential role of biogas generation for a whole range of applications, from energy, electricity production to refrigeration and a whole range of other areas. We have had other institutions, such as the Scottish Association of Marine Science, approach Dr. Morale, for example, here in Grenada to explore a little bit, possibilities around turning sargassum into bioplastics. So a whole range of possibilities there, and these are some of the things that, I'm involved with from a Grenadian perspective. Regionally, I've been involved with representing Grenada, of course. Grenada was key in setting up something called the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. And this came out on the back of the 2017 hurricane season, working with the IDB, the World Bank, Sir Richard Branson and others to put that together, and there's a small blue economy component to that. At the Waite Institute, where I serve as the Blue Economy Director, we're working in Bermuda, we're working in Antigua and Barbuda, we're also working in other places in Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, the Maldives, Seychelles, and a whole range of other islands. And we're advising those countries on how to harness the blue economy, particularly coming out of COVID. How do you help to create more jobs and so on? This is some of the work that we're actually doing right now, which is quite important, we think. The ECLAC, which is the regional arm of the UN for Latin America and the Caribbean, they are working on a debt swap and something called a Caribbean Resilience Fund. So blue financing is coming increasingly important. In Seychelles started this, doing a debt for nature swap around the ocean environment. That swap doesn't mean you give your ocean away. It simply means you take a commitment to protect it. They're able to do a debt swap plus a blue bond for about $15 million. Barbados has just done one, a debt swap, which has allowed them to, for a value of about $146 million. Belize has done one for a value of $364 million. So people are using now in the region and elsewhere the ocean environment and commitments to protect that, actually to help them to, one, protect the environment, but also to bring down debt, which is a problem for many islands, and also to invest in the blue economy. So these are some of the things that I'm working on at the moment, and we see great possibilities for this across the region.
Mm-hmm. Any possibility for, as it relates to Grenada and the debt swap?
No, it's a good question, and I think we need to go back and look at when Grenada had the debt restructuring. And Grenada, together with the IMF and the World Bank, they were able to convince investors to take a 50% haircut. So that's quite a lot. So people have, taken a loss already. So it's possible that it's a difficult discussion to go back to have with investors to say, could we do something, differently, even though you've agreed to this 50% haircut. But the world is changing. The world is changing. And more people have to show, investors have to show how their investments are related to ESG, environment, social, and governance. This is what the apex of the financial institutions, pension funds, are looking for. So it's a huge industry. I mentioned this is going up to about 33 trillion by 2026. So it's possible. It is possible that Grenada could get in touch with an institution that could help to arrange this, go back, speak to some of the creditors, see what appetite there might be, and then see how we could link that to the issuance of a blue bond, which would basically, as part of that entire deal, bring down the overall debt servicing, bring in some cash to allow Grenada to invest in its blue economy, while at the same time, doing something important, which is preserving the environment. Don't forget, if you actually save some of the fish that are going to be in Grenadian waters, they're going to go all over the world. So this is actually a global public good that we can potentially contribute to.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're running out of time. I may have to beg my producer for extra 5 minutes. Dr. Morale, you're a marine scientist and you've done an immense amount of work. Tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've been involved in.
Okay, so I mean, you brought up sargassum, so that's one thing that I've been doing some research on recently, and plan to do some more work funded through the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, looking at the biodiversity associated. So sargassum is like a floating ecosystem. So it's a pain and a pest when it comes up onto our beaches, but when it's floating offshore, it's a really rich resource for a whole array of organisms. So I've done a little bit of work on that. And then through my work with ocean spirits, I've been doing quite a lot of work with leatherback populations. And also hawksbill and green turtle populations. And if I could just bring that loop back to climate change. So in terms of temperature rises, turtles are quite an interesting species in many ways. But one thing that's very closely related to temperature is that the sex of the turtles is determined when the eggs are incubating in sand. And if the temperature is high, generally speaking, the eggs will hatch and there'll be female turtle hatchlings. Mm-hmm. Whereas if the temperature is low, the ratio is skewed heavily, biased heavily towards male turtles. So there's a big concern, not just in Grenada, but in places all around the world where turtles lay eggs on the beaches, that we possibly may have a population that is very unbalanced in the future. And in a way, that would be the best scenario, because at very, very high temperatures, the eggs really just cook in the sand, and you get very little out of those nests that are hatching. And in fact, in Grenada, we actually have very low hatchling success rates already. So only about 30% of the eggs that are laid in the sand in places like Levera, only 30% of those will actually successfully break free out of the nest and go into the environment. So that's of great concern to us. Already we're at low levels, and if climate change exacerbates that reduction, we could really be in a lot of trouble with regard to turtles. But I just think in terms of other things, in terms of the topics of this evening, I think, and Dr. Friday's mentioned about the importance of education, and I am a teacher, so I have to endorse that. But
yes.
Actually spreading the word through programs like yours. Most of the students that I teach at St. George's University are Grenadian students, or from Antigua, from Barbados, and Dominica, from the rest of the Caribbean. And I see that as a very important way of spreading the information, because everybody needs to know what climate change is. We need to be prepared for those effects. As Dr. Friday said, this isn't something we're talking about in the future. This is something right now. Already temperatures are rising, already sea levels have risen already. And so we need to be working hard to adapt, but also to reduce our impacts going forward as individuals, as a nation, and then as a global community.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Friday, I just want to come back to you. You mentioned something earlier that got me a little shaky. By 2050, if the ocean continued to rise, the Carenage could be underwater.
The Carenage, the port area, all of Tantine. What do we do? You're the expert. Well, no, it's a good question, and some work was done looking at the engineering that would need to take place. It's not cheap. It's about $60 million. The engineering that would need to take place around the Carenage to ensure that it doesn't get inundated from the sea, but as you do that, you also have to ensure that when you have flooding, that the water can get out. So there's a bit of engineering that needs to be done. There's an entire paper done, on this by New York University. So, but these are some of the challenges, across the world. I mean, New York. They've spent, after Hurricane Sandy, they invested a lot in studies working with, Dutch companies. Dutch, of course, have been doing this for centuries in terms of figuring out how to keep water out. So a lot of our, the world's cities primary cities, because of the historical importance of ocean trade, are on the coasts. Miami, for example, New York, and so on. So a lot of work will need to be done actually to protect cities around the world, including St. George's.
Right. And in terms of the citizens, in Grenada, we have a tendency to wait and see, or wait until it actually gets here and then we start, reacting. But what would you say to the general population as it relates to climate change in general, and of course sea level rise, where we can be seriously impacted? And of course another thing, and maybe Dr. Morale could also come in here on that, it is known that as the oceans get warmer, the fishes and species in the tropical region, they tend to move north, and that is, that could be a problem for fishermen. So that again could impact some aspects of the blue economy.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, I think the thing this thing is, this is the biggest global challenge we've had to deal with as a human species. And a lot of thought is going into this, countries, governments. And importantly, Grenada has been able to play a very important role in that conversation. Take something as simple as 1.5 to stay alive. Grenada was actually sitting in the chair of AOSIS, that's the Alliance of Small Island States. Dr. Decima Williams was leading at the time. Folks like Leon Charles, Dr. Spence Thomas were all involved in ensuring that the world understands the importance of not letting temperatures reach 2 degrees. And this may seem quite small, the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees. But because of the work that Grenada did, and I think islands, a decision was made to actually do further studies on this. Those studies have been done, and the rest of the world has had to agree that, in fact, it is 1.5 to stay alive. So it means that more effort needs to go in, more investment. We need to be much more aggressive in terms of bringing down carbon emissions. But with that comes an opportunity. With all of that investment, the question we have to ask ourselves in Grenada is, how do we position Grenada to be an exemplar, of climate smart economy, of the blue economy, of all of these things? And there's a real opportunity for us to do this because we're a tiny island. It's a lot easier to do, relatively small investments to show how this entire thing can work. Of course, what's needed is, we have great people in Grenada already, and I think more of us need to be talking to each other and perhaps advising policymakers on how Grenada could actually do a lot more. We have a Grenadian, Simon Steele, actually leading the UNFCCC, at the moment. This doesn't just happen like that. This is actually built on, many Grenadians over the years standing out in the climate negotiations, not on the sidelines, but leading that charge. And, so Grenada has an opportunity now, and it's important that we grasp that. It's important that we, turn this global travesty, into an opportunity for us and for other islands.
Right, thank you. Finally, Dr. Morale, I know, from some reading that, for example, the city of Boston, they've been doing a lot of work collaborating with other cities as it relates to climate change and climate responses. Let's bring that here to the Caribbean. Are our leaders doing enough as it relates to climate change and maybe adaptation, responding to all of this?
That's a very difficult question to answer in a short period of time. I think there's always more that can be done. I think Grenada has been a leader. I think small island developing states like Grenada, we are going to be disproportionately affected by the effects of climate change. So we need to punch way above our weight. And I think we have done that, but I think there's always more to do. I think in terms of decision making at the policy level, I think some of these issues may not be as prominent as they need to be. I think in terms of climate change is going to affect every aspect of our lives. So it's not an issue that you can put in one little place. It's going to affect health, it's going to affect tourism, it's going to affect agriculture, fisheries, everything. So I think in every aspect, climate change must be part of the conversation. I think Grenada has a reputation for having leadership in terms of climate change, and I think that has attracted finances and it's attracted a bunch of people as well to come and do studies and to take us on. So I think we've done well in that regard, but I don't think we can sit on our hands and feel happy about that. We need to keep leading, and I think Dr. Friday is a great spokesperson. I hope that what we're doing at St. George's University in terms of educating Caribbean students about what's going on in the environment, the importance of it, and then talking about how we can move forward with these things. And I think from a much broader perspective, in terms of bringing the level of literacy about the environment to the forefront, I think we as a population, we as individuals, we very much live beyond our means. We use more resources than is sustainable, and I think that means that we all need to change our behaviour. But you really need to understand why you're doing that. If I came and told everybody this evening you should stop using your cars, you should stop doing this. I drove here this evening. I think Dr. Friday probably did as well. But I think we can understand the importance of the ocean. I think this program this evening hopefully has brought that home. Also the threats, but there are opportunities as well, and there are things that very much that we can do, and that's almost a separate whole conversation resting on this evening's program. But I think we all need to think about resource use, think about waste, think about what we're eating, think about our use of turning lights off when we're finished. It all seems against the existential threat of climate change. Sometimes it feels like a very small thing, but every single bit of reduction of resource use will make a difference ultimately. So I guess that would be, where I would finish this evening.
Dr. Friday and Dr. Morale, it hurts me having to cut that conversation here because there's so much to talk about, so much to learn, but that's all the time we have. So I thank you very much, but of course before that, 30 seconds closing remarks. Dr. Friday?
Climate change and what's happening in the ocean is a huge travesty, but it also presents an opportunity. Grenada can position itself to harness a lot of the resources, and that means the creation of lots of jobs, livelihoods, etc., that could actually happen right here in Grenada. We just need to, step up a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morale. 30 seconds.
I think we need to look at our renewable energy. I think we're blessed with resources. We have beautiful winds. We have an abundance of sunshine, and we're really utilising. We're capturing such a tiny proportion of those right now. And I think in terms of Dr. Friday saying that we're a small country, we're quite nimble compared to most. I think we could start moving towards an entirely renewable energy society in a relatively short period of time, and actually be a leader in that, and something that other people can learn from too.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, that's all the time we have this evening. It was indeed a pleasure chatting with both Dr. Friday and Dr. Morale on these very, very important issues. Don't forget, we'll be back next Wednesday for another episode of our Climate Reality. Until then, thank you very much for staying with us. Have a good night. All the best.